Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahams Surya-Rajacharya Shri Shri Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki ISKCON GBC BBD Foundation Shri Prabhupada Ki Shri Shri Radha Giridhari Ki Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadramai Ki Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Granth-raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Nittai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to the Lotus Sweet Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Naskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Hare Krishna. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 19, Text 4. The chapter is entitled The Island of Jambudweep. Yattad vishuddhanu bhava matramekam Yattad vishuddhanu bhava matramekam Svatejasadvasta gunavyavastam pratyak prashantam sudiyopalambanam yanama rupam niraham prapadye yattad vishuddhanubhavamatramekam svatejasa gunavyavastam pratyak prashantam sudiyopalambanam yannama rupam niraham prapadye yattad vishuddhanubhavamatramekam svatejasa gunavyavastam pratyak prashantam sudiyopalambanam yanama rupam niraham prapadye. Oh, I was given 4. Of course, I will do that. Translation to text 3. Let me please your Lordship by chanting the Bija mantra Omkar. I wish to offer my respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who is the best among the most highly elevated personalities. Your Lordship is a reservoir of all the good qualities of Aryans, people who are advanced. Your character and behavior are always consistent, and you always control your senses and mind. Acting just like an ordinary human being, you exhibit exemplary character to teach others how to behave. There is a touchstone that can be used to examine the quality of gold, but you are like a touchstone that can verify all good qualities. You are worshipped by Brahmanas, who are the foremost of all devotees. You, the Supreme Person, and are the King of Kings, and therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. One more brave soul. Svatejasa gunavyavastam. Yat, which, that, to the Supreme Truth, to that Supreme Truth, Vishuddha, transcendently pure, without contamination by material nature, Anubhava, experience, Matram, that Satchit Ananda transcendental body, Ekam, the One, Svatejasa, by his own spiritual potency, Dvasta, vanquished, Gunavyavastam, the influence of the modes of material nature, Pratyak, transcendental, not to be seen with material eyes, Prashantam, undisturbed by material agitation, Sudhiya, by Krishna consciousness, or purified consciousness, uncontaminated by material desires, fruitive activities, and speculative philosophy. Upalambhanam, who can be achieved? He, indeed, anama-rūpaṁ, without a material name and form. Niraham, without a material ego. Prapadye, let me offer my respectful obeisances. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki. The Lord, whose pure form, Satchit Ananda Vigraha, is uncontaminated by the modes of material nature, can be perceived by pure consciousness. In the Vedanta, he is described as being one without a second. Because of his spiritual potency, he is untouched by the contamination of material nature, and because he is not subjected to material vision, he is known as transcendental. He has no material activities, nor has he a material form or name. Only in pure consciousness, Krishna consciousness, can one perceive the transcendental form of the Lord. Let us be firmly fixed at the lotus feet of Lord Ramachandra, and let us offer our respectful obeisances unto those transcendental lotus feet. Please repeat. The Lord, whose pure form, Satchidananda Vigraha, is uncontaminated by the modes of material nature, can be perceived by pure consciousness. In the Vedanta, he is described as being one without a second. Because of his spiritual potency, he is untouched by the contamination of material nature. And because he is not subjected to material vision, he is known as transcendental. He has no material activities, nor has he a material form or name. Only in pure consciousness, Krishna consciousness, can one perceive the transcendental form of the Lord. Let us be firmly fixed at the lotus feet of Lord Ramachandra, and let us offer our respectful obeisances unto those transcendental lotus feet. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, appears in various expansions, as stated in the Brahma-saṁhitā 539. Ramādi-mūrtishu kala-niyamena tishtan nānāvataram-akarod bhuvanesha kintu Krishna svayam samabhavat paramam pumanyo govindam ādi-puruṣaṁ tamaham bhajāmi. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, who is always situated in various incarnations such as Rama, Nrsimha, and many sub-incarnations as well, but who is the original personality of Godhead known as Krishna, and who incarnates personally also. Krishna, who is Vishnu Tattva, has expanded himself in many Vishnu forms, of which Lord Ramachandra is one. We know that the Vishnu Tattva is carried by the transcendental bird Garuda, and is equipped with different types of weapons in 4 hands. Therefore, we may doubt whether Lord Ramachandra could be in the same category, since he was carried by Hanuman, not by Garuda, and had neither 4 hands nor the Shankha, Chakra, Gada and Padma. Consequently, this verse clarifies that Ramachandra is as good as Krishna. Ramādi-mūrtishu kala. Although Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ramachandra is not different from him. Ramachandra is unaffected by the modes of material nature, and therefore he is prashanta, never disturbed by those modes. Unless one is saturated with love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot appreciate the transcendental value of Lord Ramachandra. One cannot see him with material eyes. Because demons like Ravan had no material vision, they consider Lord Ramachandra an ordinary Kshatriya king. Ravan, therefore, attempted to kidnap Lord Ramachandra's eternal consort, Sita Devi. Actually, however, Ravan could not carry off Sita Devi in her original form. As soon as she was touched by Ravana's hands, she gave him a material form, but she maintained her original form beyond his vision. Therefore, in this verse, the words pratyak prashantam indicate that Lord Ramachandra and his potency, the goddess Sita, keep themselves aloof from the influence of the material energy. In the Upanishads, it is said, Yam evaisha vrinute tena labhya. Katha Upanishad 1.2.23. The Supreme Lord, Paramatma, the personality of Godhead, can be seen or perceived only by persons who are saturated with devotional service. As stated in the Brahma-saṁhitā 5.38, premāñjana-cchurita-bhakti-vilocanena santaḥ sadaiva hṛdayeṣu vilokayanti śyāmasundaram acintya-guṇa-svarūpaṁ govindam ādi-puruṣaṁ ahaṁ bhajāmi. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Śyāmasundara, situated within the heart of the devotee. Similarly, in the Chandogya Upanishad it is stated, Etas tisro devata anena jivena. In this verse of the Chandogya Upanishad, the word anena is used to distinguish the Atma and Paramatma as two separate identities. The words tisro devata indicate that the body of the living entity is made of three material elements: fire, earth, and water. Although the Paramatma enters the heart of the Jivatma, who is influenced by and designated by a material body, the Paramatma has nothing to do with the Jivatma's body. Because the Paramatma has no material connections, he is described here as anama rupam niraham. The Paramatma has no material identity, whereas the Jivatma does. The Jivatma may introduce himself as an Indian, American, German, and so on, but the Paramatma has no material designations, and therefore he has no material name. The Jivatma is different from his name, but the Paramatma is not. His name and he himself are one and the same. This is the meaning of niraham, which means without material designations. This word cannot possibly be twisted to mean that the Paramatma has no ahankar, no I-ness or identity. He has his transcendental identity as the Supreme. This is the explanation given by Srila Jiva Goswami. According to another interpretation given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, niraham means nirnischayena aham. Niraham does not mean that the Supreme Lord has no identity. Rather, the stress given by the word aham proves strongly that he does have his personal identity, because nir not only means negative, but also means strong ascertainment. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurundinataranam. Jai Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I request the blessings of the devotees, particularly Dravidapuru, Vijayapuru. I feel unqualified to speak, especially in front of you. So please bless me that I can say something worthy and beneficial for everyone. It's a great honor to be here in ISKCON San Diego. It's my first time here in Southern California. I'd been before to ISV and so on, but yeah, it's a beautiful temple, beautiful deities. And we're speaking today, hearing today about the island of Jambudweep, and in particular this is Kim Purusha Varsha. So Kim Purusha So this word means kim purusha. Purusha means man. Kim means what kind of. So what kind of man is this? So kim purusha loka is basically monkeys. Yeah. So what kind of man is this? They're not quite men. So they're monkeys. And who do they worship? They worship Lord Ramachandra in Kim Purusha Loka, headed by Hanuman, who's the greatest devotee of Lord Ram. So in this chapter, we're hearing prayers, stutis to Lord Ramachandra. So it's described by the Acharyas that Lord Ramachandra, so there's three main incarnations. Of course, there's unlimited incarnations, but there's three main incarnations who are described as Sat Aishwarya Purna. So they have the six potencies, the six opulences in completion. What are the six opulences? Wealth, strength, beauty, fame, renunciation, and knowledge. Yeah, so there's the six opulences. So these three incarnations in particular have these six opulences in completion. There's Sad Aishwarya Purna. But at the same time, Rupa Goswami describes 64 qualities. He explains that the jiva can have 50 of these 64 qualities. Lord Shiva can have 55 of these 64 qualities. So Prabhupada gives percentages. The jiva, 50 out of 64 means 78%. And then Prabhupada says, so 55, Lord Shiva, I always wondered when I first read, Prabhupada was giving these percentages. He said 78%. And then he said 84% for Lord Shiva. So I was thinking, where did these percentages come from? And I was impressed, it's so scientific. And of course it is. But then I realized later that actually it's 50 out of 64 for the jiva. It's 55 out of 64 for Lord Shiva. And then Lord Narayan is 60 out of 64. So he's 94%, if I remember correctly. 93 or 94%. And then, of course, there's one personality who's in a category of his own. And that is Krishna. So he can have he has 64 of these qualities. What are the four which differentiate Lord Narayan and Krishna? The flute, Venu Madhurya. So Krishna's beautiful, wonderful, enchanting flute playing, which attracts the residents of Vrindavan. So this is one that none of the other incarnations have. A second, the Leela. The Leela. So the wonderful Leela Madhurya, Krishna's wonderful, sweet, nectarian pastimes, which attract the souls of conditioned living entities and enchant the residents of Vrindavan. So Leela Madhurya. Of course, all of the incarnations have pastimes, but they're not as sweet and endearing and enchanting as those of Krishna. And then, anyone? Yes. So Krishna's, how is it phrased? Leela, Venu. Krishna is, his name is the all-attractive one. Of course, Lord Ramachandra is extremely attractive. He's very, that's why everyone was attracted to Lord Ramachandra. But Krishna's attractive beauty is surpassed by none. It's superlative. And then finally, it's Krishna's associates. So this part of the Leelas, but Krishna's associates are, and the Sangha, the atmosphere that's created by the outpouring of love by Krishna's associates creates a very fertile ground for the deepest rasa to be experienced. So these four differentiate Krishna from the others. The others have these to a degree, but nowhere near Krishna. So of course Lord Ramachandra is very beautiful, but nowhere like Krishna. They have leelas, but nothing like those. The richness and the depth of the leelas of Krishna are unlimited. So Lord Ramachandra is Vishnu Tattva. He has 60 of these 64 qualities. But ultimately, as the Bhagavatam 1.3.28, the Paribhasa Sutra describes, Ete jamsa kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Indrari vyakulam loke mridyanti yuge yuge. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Ultimately, this is the essence. So this is a Paribhasa Sutra. It's the lens through which all of the other pastimes should be seen, or all of the other verses of the Bhagavatam should be seen. That Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no one greater than Him. So there's this example given that there are many candles. So all of the incarnations represent many, many candles. And all of those candles are lit and very beautiful, and they all look equal. But there's one candle which lit all of the others, the source of all of the incarnations, and that is Krishna. So once Lord Shiva, he went to Brahmaloka, and he acquired the Ramayana from Brahmaloka. And as you go up, so we have a Bhagavatam which is 18,000 verses, but when you go further up to higher planets, the Bhagavatam expands. Same principle, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. But the number of verses, the detail, the pastimes expand. The Bhagavatam principle remains the same. So in the same way, the Ramayana also expands. So in Brahmaloka, the Ramayana is 1 billion verses. Imagine, 1 billion verses. So Lord Shiva acquired this Ramayana and he began to read the Ramayana. So Parvati got worried. She thought if he starts absorbing himself in the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra, then he won't have any time for me. He'll just be absorbed in Ramayana. She knows how, Lord Shiva is a real yogi. He's a tapasvi. When he gets absorbed, then he really gets absorbed. So she started to get worried. She said, my dear husband, Shiva, Lord Shiva, what will you do with such a huge Ramayana? It's so huge. So many verses. You know about Lord Ramachandra. You've read versions before, I think there's so many other living entities who don't know about Lord Ram. You should distribute what you have. She said, the river Ganges flows, but never drinks its own water. A cow gives milk, but never drinks its own milk. A tree gives fruits, but never eats its own fruits. So you should give. You should give. You're a giver. Yeah. So Lord Shiva is described 8.7.44. When he drinks the poison of the milk ocean, what is that? Aradhanam, Vishnura. No, sorry, I'm thinking this is Bhagavatam. Tapyante lokatapena sadhavo prayasodhana paramaradhanam tadhi puruṣusya khilatmanaha. So it's described. This verse describes Lord Shiva who drunk the poison, the churning of the milk ocean. It says, Prabhupada, it's interesting how Prabhupada translates it. He says that this is characteristic of great personalities. They almost always dedicate themselves. Accept austerities, that's it. They accept austerities for the benefit of mankind. So they take on austerities to help other living entities. So Lord Shiva was inspired. This is the nature of the wife. She inspires the husband. So he distributed the Ramayana. He gave 1 billion 3 times. So he gave 333 million verses to the upper planetary systems. He gave 333 million verses to the middle planetary systems. And he gave 333 million verses to the lower planetary systems. How many verses was he left with? 1 million. Yeah, so 333, 333, 333, 999. He's left with 1 million verses. So then he takes all of these verses and he says 1 million verses, that's also quite a lot of verses. So then he distributes 333,000 verses to the upper planetary systems, 333,000 verses to the middle planetary systems, and 333,000 verses to the lower planetary systems. How many verses is he left with? 1,000. Then he takes these 1,000 verses and he says, I want to give. I want to give. So then he gives 333 verses to the upper planetary systems. He gives 333 verses to the middle planetary systems. And he gives 333 verses to the lower planetary systems. How many verses is he left with? One verse. We're getting there, we're getting there. Then he's got this one verse left. And this one verse has 4 lines and 8 syllables each. It's 32 syllables. So he thinks, I've got 32 syllables. He gives 10 syllables to the upper planetary systems, 10 syllables to the middle planetary systems, and 10 syllables to the lower planetary systems. What is he left with? He's left with 2 syllables. What are these 2 syllables? Ra-ma. Ra-ma. And Lord Shiva was meditating on these 2 syllables, Rama, and the whole Ramayana, all 1 billion verses manifested in his heart. And he realized, and he was commented, he told his wife, that within this Rama, everything is contained. Everything that we need is contained. And this goes for Krishna also. Rupa Goswami says, Tunde tundavali ratim bitanute tundavali labdhe karna krodha kadambini gatayate karnar budhe vyaspirham cheta prangana sangini vichayate sarvendriyanam kritim no jane janita ki yad viramrite krishneti varnam dvai. Rupa Goswami, this is in Vidagdha Madhava, he quotes this verse. He says, when this holy name, when I chant this holy name, Krishna, when I chant these 2 syllables, Krishna, then I feel like I wish the holy name dances on my tongue, and I wish I had millions of tongues. He says, when this sound vibration enters into my ears, I wish I had millions of ears. And when this sound vibration enters from my ears into the chamber of my heart, all other senses become inert. Nothing else is working. And this holy name is dancing within the chamber of my heart. And then the last line, he says, No jane janita ki ad viramrite krishneti varnam dvai. Who knows? Who can imagine? Who can estimate how much nectar, amrite, how much nectar there is in just these 2 syllables, Krishna? How much nectar? So somehow in our lives, and of course for us, Rama in the Maha Mantra, it can mean Lord Balaram. It can mean Lord Ramachandra. It can mean Lord Balaram. But for us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Rama refers to Krishna, who's a reservoir of all pleasure. And so in our lives as devotees, it's very important, time flies, it's very important to have clarity as to what our focus is. What is our goal? For example, if I say, okay, let's go and jump in the car, the first thing you'll ask me is, where are we going? Where are we going? What is our goal? So in the same way, we have to know what the goal is of our life. And I speak to many devotees who don't quite have clarity on that. What is the goal of my life? Number one, sometimes it's mixed in with various material aspirations. And for those who may be purified of those, there may not be clarity as to what the goal or destination is of my sadhana bhakti. But in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami says, Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhava sa sadhana bidha. Nitya-siddhasya bhavasa prakritam hṛdi sadyata. He says the goal of our sadhana, of our Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, is bhava. Bhavasa sadhana bida. The goal of sadhana practice is bhava. And this is what it's saying here in the verse, that let me be firmly fixed at the lotus feet of Lord Ramachandra. It's very clear what the goal is. So the Kim-Puruṣas, they may not quite be humans, but they're very devoted to Lord Ramachandra. And they have very, like Murari Gupta in Caitanya Charitamrita, he had real clarity. They tried to persuade him to become a Krishna Bhakta, but he couldn't give up the lotus feet of Raghu, of Lord Ramachandra, of his Lord, the Lord of his life. In the same way, we have to have that kind of chastity and clarity that I want to see Krishna. I always think of George Harrison, I really want to see you, and to have that kind of, I really want to see Krishna. And our sadhana, our spiritual practices have to be invested with that desire. Because actually spiritual life is all about desire. What do we want? And our prayers, our meditations, our conversations with their lordships have to be infused with that desire. And the more we desire it, the more we get reciprocation. That's why Prabhupada gave us Tulsi Arati. He says, Mora e abhilash. What is my desire? You're stating to Tulsi Marani that this is my desire. So what is my desire? Vilas kunje diyovas. It's deep. When Prabhupada's godbrothers heard that he was including this Tulsi Arati in the morning program, in his very fledgling movement, they weren't very happy. They were critical. He said, this is deep. But Prabhupada has given us the real depths of Krishna consciousness if we look for it, if we really meditate on it. If we really enter into the Krishna conscious practices, the books, the lectures that Prabhupada has given us, then everything is there. Everything is there for us to inspire us and to support our advancement in Krishna consciousness all the way up to the very topmost goals. And although one may think and feel and experience that my heart is full of all sorts of impurities, still we have to know about the goal and we have to desire for the goal. And those things should inspire us. Otherwise, sometimes we pick up the bead bag and it's just like jumping in the car and not quite knowing where we're going. What do I want? Who am I pleading for service for? We say, O Lord, O energy dear Lord, please engage me in your loving devotional service. Are we actually making that prayer? Is it actually purposeful, meaningful, clear? Because that clarity, it elicits the mercy of the Lord. So I will stop there because it's 8:30 and see if there's any quick corrections, comments, please.
I have one comment and one question. Is that okay? So, as you were mentioning that whole pastime with Lord Shiva distributing the Ramayana, and he ended up with one word, Rama. And I thought of this verse in the Madhya Lila. You may know this one. And this verse is spoken by Lord Shiva to Durga about the holy name of Ram. Do you know this one?
Vague. I don't know the verse.
Madhya 9:32. Rama Rameti Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Vistulyam Rama Nama Varanane. Varanane, oh lovely faced woman. O Varanana, I chant the holy name of Rama, 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 and thus enjoy this beautiful sound. This holy name of Ramchandra is equal to 1,000 holy names of Lord Vishnu. Seems to be a perfect coda to that pastime that you're saying.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
And my question is, I really appreciate that sharing with the idea of keeping a goal in mind and moving toward the goal. But I was reminded of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, how Lord Chaitanya, he also Of course, this Krishna himself, he came with this high goal of tasting the love of Radharani and the pleasure she's tasting from that, and his own qualities through her love and everything. But he also had the other motive, anarpita chadim chadat, for spreading Krishna consciousness. So how do we integrate that desire to share Krishna consciousness as one of our goals? We have our personal goal of wanting to attain bhava, but we have our eagerness to serve the spiritual master and distribute books in the holy name. So where does that fit in?
Yeah, I think there's two missions in our lives. One is an internal mission, and the other is the external mission. And I think actually the two of them go very much hand in hand, because I really feel that our own personal development in Krishna consciousness is a real mission, and it requires intensity, it requires an absorption, it requires a focus, and you have to be brave sometimes also to enter into areas of the heart which may be dark, mysterious, you don't know about, you haven't really ventured into them before. They talk about the dark night of the soul and so many things. It requires a certain focus, and I think the mission, external mission, of distributing Krishna consciousness to the world has very similar traits, qualities and characteristics which we can draw upon. So the desire to go out there, to preach, to share Krishna consciousness, it also requires an intensity, a mission, a drive, a focus and an energy. So I think, and when we go out there, we're challenged. For younger devotees, their faith may be challenged. People may be aggressive, rude, questioning, inquisitive. And all of those things help me to question myself, to go deeper within my own Krishna consciousness, question my understanding, the depth of my understanding, my realization, etc. And they give impetus to go deeper. So it's important that we remain balanced. I think that's where many times we may go wrong, where we get too much into one thing or too much into the other. Balance in life, Krishna says, 6:17, Bhagavad Gita, yukta hara viharasya, yukta chaistasya karmasu. So yukta, balance, is always very, very important. There were always forces in life which send us out of kilter, but we have to bring it back. There may be periods where things are very busy. Externally, there's a festival, there's preaching, there's so many things going on, and so we may have to do something more externally, but then we have to bring it back and make sure that we're centered internally and focused on what the goal is. Otherwise, our external service can become mechanical and much less effective. And at the same time, sometimes you see devotees who become more like bhajananandis and more internally focused and not so desirous to go out and preach, but then they're lacking. I often see that then they lack in their intensity in the sadhana practice. They can very easily become mechanical in their spiritual practices and not really have that desire to really go deeper. So Prabodhananda Saraswati says in the Caitanya Chandamrita, he says, Yatha yatha gaura padara vindeta bhaktim krita punya rashi yatha tathot sharpati hriddaka shmat radha padamboja sudambu rashi. So he explains that how do you get the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani, which is what Caitanya Mahaprabhu came to give? You have to serve Gora. You have to get credits from, my spiritual master always tells me, get credits from Gora. Distribute Prabhupada's books and get credits from Gora. And as your pile of credits from Caitanya Mahaprabhu increases, your certificate or your pass into Goloka Vrindavan is gradually being written out. Prabhupada said, get a certificate from Krishna that this man has done something for me. So somehow we have to act in a way that we get a certificate from Krishna, that we've done something for him. And that certificate will be our ticket going back to Godhead. So both are very, very important, but I think life's really about balance, and we have to always there's always things which are taking us out of balance. That's my experience. And so really it's about how do we center ourselves and come back into balance when things go away. Is that okay, Prabhu? Would you have something to...
Yeah,
please.
I could just
I'm just again remembering your story, because there's Lord Shiva, and basically his wife Durga is like his temple commander. You know, hey, you can't just read the book all day in the ashram. You got to go out and distribute.
Right.
But then he distributes, and he ends up with tremendous taste for the holy name.
Yes.
So there's a parallel there, and it also reminds me. I listened to a lecture every morning, and Prabhupada speaking on this prayer of Kunti, Vibhadak Santu Takshasvat. You know, let those dangers happen again and again, because then we'll see you again and again.
Mm.
So every book distributor can know a perfect example. We have Vijay, 40x years distributing books and undergoing all these austerities, but he has a tremendous taste for chanting and hearing and everything else. And they go hand in hand.
Yes.
Just as Kunti is saying, we'll see you again when these dangers happen. So when there's the difficulty of distributing, you have to call on Krishna from the bottom of your heart. Janmai śyāmasundaram Shibir, right? And you can actually feel desperate to Krishna. Then that taste is also transferred to everything else about Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Beautiful. Absolutely. Yeah, that was preaching, and particularly my experience book distribution, at least for me, it forces me to take shelter of Krishna. You know, if I'm coasting, then Krishna creates a situation where he makes me take shelter of him. And actually, my experience is that internally, Krishna wants me to be on my knees, and then he gives the mercy. But he waits until I'm on my knees, begging to him. And then he just lets things fly. So, and that's the beautiful thing about, and I don't know any other service which gives you that experience, where and that kind of interaction and that kind of communion with Krishna, where he's really live, present, and interacting. And of course, pujaris have their own stories, and everyone has their own experiences. But for me, my personal experience on the streets, Krishna is very present, and encouraging me to take shelter. And when you actually do that, that experience, that connection is like no other. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for bringing that out. So, what do we do? Someone will ask it.
Zoom you can ask.
Oh, really? Well,
Zoom you can ask.
Zoom, please.
Yes, Ananda Prabhu?
Wow, amazing. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, my humble obeisances. Prabhu, may I?
Please.
Yes, my question is, why is it that Aryans are recognized as advanced people?
Okay, so why is it that Aryans are advanced people? So they're a particular class of people, and just like, Caitanya Mahaprabhu says, Bharata bhumite hoila manushya janmajar janma sarthaka kori karo paropakar. So it's a particular responsibility of those who have taken birth in India, because they received it. Naturally, if you're born in India, you're surrounded by bhakti. It's there. There's no getting away from it. Of course, these days, the Indians are chasing the Americans as fast as they can. And they're losing their own culture. I shudder to think what the future will be of India. But still, they have this natural propensity towards bhakti. So in the same way the Aryans had a particular qualification, Krishna says to Arjun, Anarya Jushtam, you're a disgrace to the Aryan race, because you're of this class, but you're not acting like an Aryan, because you want to run away, you want to flee, and not do your duty and fight. So the Aryans are a particular class, and they naturally exhibit certain qualities and characteristics. They're quality people. Is that okay? Does that...
Oh, Prabhu,
Please.
better than okay, as expected. Wonderful answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Trivida Prabhu would like to add something.
Just from the Bhagavad Gita, from the purports, in that very verse that you were talking about. Prabhupada says that the Aryans are those who understand the spiritual values of life, and they live according to those spiritual values. And that, of course, there's a lot that that you could explain about that, but that's the basic definition.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful class. You were talking about how we should be so focused on our goal, the prayojan, bhava, or as George Harrison said, I want to see you. But as a Vaidhi sadhaka, we have no experience of bhava, at least in our present use with our present perception. And even when we read about devotees experiencing bhava, we may not appreciate the depth to which they are feeling that. So is it that we aspire for a goal which we don't understand fully, or we just expect Krishna and the acharyas to fill our heart with understanding?
Did you study at university?
Yes.
What did you study for?
Computer science.
Computer science. So when you started your computer science degree, or when you enrolled on the computer science degree, did you know what it means to be a computer scientist? To a degree maybe, right? Something. But over time, as you embarked on the degree, you completed your first year, you completed your second year, 4 years?
Yeah.
3 years. Your understanding of what it means to be a computer scientist increased and developed and grew, correct?
Yes.
But when you enrolled in the degree, you had that goal of being a computer scientist, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So that clarity increases over time, but the goal is still there.
Yes.
Same with Krishna Bhakti. Who is Krishna? So we have to read and hear about Krishna. That's why Prabhupada gave us the books, his lectures, etc., so that we can learn and understand about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How much can we learn and understand? It depends on the purity of our heart. So, for example, that's why Brahma-saṁhitā, Prabhupada quotes this verse, premāñjana-cchurita-bhakti-vilocanena, sadaiva, hṛdayeṣu, vilokayanti. So for one whose eyes are the pulp of love, or Prabhupada says in other places, salve of love, anointed, that's the word, anointed with the pulp of love, they can really see Krishna face to face. But that it's a process, and it begins with Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and then there's Raganuga sadhana bhakti, but the process is all delineated in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, for example, and throughout Prabhupada's books. And that process is very clear, very scientific, and step by step, just like year 1, year 2, year 3, and finally year 4 of the computer science degree. In the same way, we have Shraddha to Prema. Step by step, progress and advancement in Krishna consciousness, as long as we follow the prescriptions of Krishna consciousness. So it's very clearly delineated. And I was impressed when I came to Krishna consciousness. Because I grew up in a family where we worship Krishna. It's very wonderful, very nice, but my parents couldn't really answer my questions with clarity. So that's what really, when I saw the Hare Krishnas, I was a little doubtful, about them for various reasons. You have all sorts of conceptions and prejudices. But when I came in touch with a particular devotee, he explained the philosophy to me in a way that I saw how clear and systematic it is. And when I understood something about Madhura Kundamini and Vishnu Chakri Thakur, and how he, fleshes out the stages of devotion, that blew me away. I thought, wow, this is really scientific. So it's all there, and as long as we practice strictly, chant attentively, study the books, serve the devotees, serve the mission, our progress and advancement is guaranteed. It's guaranteed. Please.
It's also important for many reasons to study Srila Prabhupada's life, because there we have the example of the prema bhakti, bhava, and everything. And the Lilamrita is most encyclopedic, but there's also wonderful descriptions. I'm thinking of, what was that book? Prabhupada, Our Eternal Friend, or A Friend to All? Who wrote that? Mula Prakriti. Mula Prakriti. You know, she went to interview people who knew Prabhupada, you know, back in the, I think, 80s. She went around India and she found that so many, you know, pastimes came out that we didn't know before. Mm-hmm. So that can encourage one, a good example of someone on that level, mm-hmm. and especially serving him here, and we have a connection. Mm-hmm. And so that'll help with our progress toward the state of bhava.
Mm-hmm. I guess we should stop. Thank you so much to everyone. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nittai Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari.